The views and opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Open Sky Radio. Please be advised.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to The Fire You Can't Put Out. Again this week with you, I am Melvin. This is for the week of August 7th. I'm recording on Wednesday of this week. I generally record on Thursday. Recording on Wednesday of this week. August is generally a slow month for news. Congress has gone home. A lot of people are on vacation. But being August, it's also an ample time for a lot of news stories to go unnoticed. I want to begin tonight by first setting a tone, and then we'll go from there. I got a lot of news. I don't know if I'm going to get to it all, but I'm going to do my best. So let me start here. On January 20th, 2009, Republican leaders in Congress literally plotted to sabotage and undermine the U.S. economy during President Obama's inauguration. Think about that. January 20th, 2009. Of course, the Obamas and all their supporters are at different balls all around town. Everybody's celebrating, partying. Well, not everybody. The Republicans certainly were not. John McCain certainly was not, and Sarah Palin certainly was not. But that night, something very big went down that has set the tone for the last, say, 5 years. In Robert Draper's book, Do Not Ask What Good We Do, Inside the U.S. House of Representatives, Draper wrote that during a 4-hour invitation-only meeting with GOP hate propaganda minister Frank Luntz, GOP law writers literally plotted to sabotage and undermine the U.S. economy. The guest list goes like this. Frank Luntz, Representative Paul Ryan from Wisconsin, Eric Cantor from Virginia, Kevin McCarthy from California, Pete Sessions from Texas, Jeb Hensarling from Texas, Pete Hoekstra from Michigan, Dan Lundgren from California, Jim DeMint from South Carolina, John Kyle from Arizona, Tom Coburn from Oklahoma, John Ensign from Nevada, and Bob Corker from Tennessee. And Newt Gingrich was also at the meeting. The senior GOP members plotted to bring Congress to a standstill regardless of how much it would hurt the American economy by pledging to obstruct and block all of President Obama's legislation or anything that the president stood behind. Remember, for months prior to January 20th, 2009, America had been losing 750,000 jobs per month because of the policies that were pushed by Bush but passed by his Republican Congress. 2 months after their covert meeting, which took place at the caucus room in Washington, D.C., where they plotted to sabotage the economy, Representative Pete Sessions said Republicans should follow the model of the Taliban. Actual quote, in its battles against President Obama. And he says, and I quote, Taliban insurgency. We understand perhaps a little bit more because of the Taliban. Insurgency is the way they went about systematically understanding how to disrupt a person's entire processes. And these Taliban is an example of how you go about to change a person from their messaging to their operations to their frontline message. And we need to understand that insurgency may be required when dealing with the other side. And they're referring to Democrats, of course. At the meeting, Kevin McCarthy said, we got to challenge them on every single bill. Show united and unyielding opposition to the president's economic policies. And they've done a pretty fair job of it. But here's how they voted prior to the president, Obama. They voted yes to the Bush-Cheney 2008 stimulus. Voted yes to the Bush-Cheney bailing out of Bear Stearns. Yes to the bailing out of AIG. Yes to the Bush-Cheney TARP in September 2008. And yes to the Bush-Cheney TARP in 2008. These are the same Republicans that are absolutely stammering and falling all over themselves right now because we're spending too much money. They supported the Bush-Cheney keeping cost of two wars, keeping those off the budget. Spending $4 trillion while giving the top 1% tax cuts, ignoring that taxes pay for wars. Senators Jim DeMint, John Kyle, Tom Coburn, John Ensign, and Bob Corker have filibustered more bills, over 300 than any other Congress combined in U.S. history. Voted no on every single piece of legislation brought to the floor, including no on Al Franken's anti-rape amendment, no on the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, no on the Fair Pay Act, no on the anti-outsourcing bill. Luntz has been the Republicans' hate propaganda minister since at least 1993. And these are the words that he says that they should use in order to change the messaging. Frank Luntz is the best at messaging, quite honestly. Okay? So he says, don't say oil drilling, say energy independence. Don't say inheritance tax, say death tax. Don't say capitalism, say economic freedom. Don't say that the government taxes the rich, say the government takes from the rich. Don't admit that lobbyists are collective bargainers for corporations. Say union collective bargaining steals your tax dollars. Luntz says that people hate government, so don't say healthcare reform, say government takeover. Don't say public workers, call them government workers. And it has worked. It has worked like a charm. I spend quite a bit of time on right-wing news sites, right-wing news blogs, and listening to right-wing radio. And yeah, those guys have the messaging down. And it's all ideological. A lot of people that complain about the president, let me tell you this. I was driving on I-5 yesterday near the Oregon-Washington border, headed north, headed south. And on both ways, I looked up at one of the overpasses. There were about a dozen people, all of them holding signs that say, honk for impeachment, impeach Obama now, okay? I didn't stop and talk to any of these people, but I can tell you two things for sure. If I were to walk up on that bridge and ask any of those people what impeachment means, their answer would be wrong. They have no idea what it means. It sounds good. To them, impeachment simply means removal. Removing the president. And why do they want to remove the president? They want to remove the president because they lost. They, of course, would object to me saying that. So let me put it to you like this. I'd say, well, what don't you like about the president? They would say, we hate his policies. His policies have been destructive to America. Then, my next question would be, what policies has he proposed that have been passed and signed into law that have been destructive to America? Once again, I'm pretty damn sure I would not get a correct answer, or at least a coherent answer. Here's the thing. Impeachment is an indictment, okay? You break a law, you get indicted. That's what it is. Now, which is not to say that the president hasn't broken laws. I separate with the president wildly when it comes to the drone strikes. Okay? It's murder, in my opinion. But the Republicans are generally okay with murder and war and shooting and all the rest, so they're not going to say that. But an impeachment is an indictment. You broke a law and you're going to get it. You're going to get impeached. Then you have to be impeached in the House. Then you have to be impeached in the Senate for actual removal from office. I'm pretty sure I'm certain none of them on that bridge with their big signs, which I didn't even see if they were misspelled or not. I imagine some of them were. And here's the other thing. Obama's policies. I just read about Congress. About the book, Robert Draper's book, Do Not Ask What Good We Do, inside the U.S. House of Representatives, he released, where it said, challenge Obama on every single bill. And they have. Yeah, the president had an agenda and still has an agenda. But the president doesn't pass laws. The president can propose laws, but he can't pass them. So if there are things passing out of the House of Representatives right now that are ruining your life, it's not Obama. It's Congress. they're the only body that gets to pass laws. Well, arguably the Supreme Court, but we'll leave that debate for another day. So if you say to that to people, well, your congressman, if your congressman is a Republican, especially your congressman is the problem, right? And they might say, yeah, Congress is a problem, but then it always gets followed up with the inevitable, but my congressman is great, right? Everybody's is great. When I lived in Spokane, Kathy McMorris Rogers, teabagger, okay, I didn't care for her. I still don't. I believe she's the most powerful Republican woman right now in the House. Now I've got Jamie Herrera Butler, another hardcore con, delightful, okay? It's nice in Washington. We've got two good senators, though. So, with the tone now set, let me get into a few stories. Mitch McConnell, who actually said during the president's first term, his number one job was to make sure that Obama's a one-term president. Failure. A couple of weeks ago, John Boehner said that they should not be judged on how many laws they pass. They should be judged on how many laws they repeal. They're not passing laws. They've repealed no laws. I'd say these guys are failing. Sure, they're obstructing, and that's all delightful, because it fits really well with the conservative narrative that the government doesn't work. The government doesn't work if you don't want it to work. If you send Republicans there, most Republicans anyway, this is what you're going to get. So, he said, Mitch McConnell said that he's going to keep the Senate in perpetual gridlock. And they've done that. Endless filibusters. They've done that. Enter Alison Lundgren Grimes, the young Kentucky Secretary of State who is challenging McConnell for his Senate seat. The Democratic challenger has taken the race by storm and has become a real threat to defeat McConnell in 2014. This past Saturday night, which would be Saturday the 3rd, McConnell and Grimes faced off for the first time in the 133rd Political Forum at Fancy Farm in Kentucky. It was there that Grimes set the tone for what looks like to be an exciting race for Democrats and a tough one for Republicans, as reported by Politico. That while McConnell spoke in broad terms and had no desire to directly attack his Democratic opponent, Lundgren went straight for the jugular, blaming McConnell for being the reason why nothing gets done in the Senate, and delivering by far the most memorable line of the evening. Senator McConnell is the most unpopular senator among, this is a quote now, among Democrats and Republicans as well, Lundgren said. There's a reason he's so disliked. He sowed the seeds of dysfunction, and after 30 years, Senator McConnell is at the center of it. As long as he remains in D.C., D.C. will stand for dysfunction. The GOP has come to stand for gridlock, obstruction, and partisanship. If doctors told Senator McConnell he had a kidney stone, he'd refuse to pass it. What gives her a fair chance, other than the fact that she's dead on with respect to McConnell, is follow me here. Another quote from her. She says, "I'm a practicing Catholic, but I'm also for the separation of church and state. I'm supportive of the Supreme Court decision in Roe v. Wade, and I think that this is the kind of choice that has to be up to the woman, her God, and her doctor." By taking this position, Lundgren is clearly making an effort to capture the female vote in 2014, and she could very well get it. In 2012, women left the Republican Party in droves and voted for Democrats as punishment for the extreme anti-abortion laws that the GOP has been pushing in states across the country and at the federal level. As a result of the Republican war on women, the GOP lost the female vote by 11 points, 55 to 44. And if you remember 2012, there were an awful lot of men, Republican men, speaking about abortion. None of them saying it's a horrible, awful thing. I guess that's supposed to be implied. But a lot of things like God-given rape, welcome rape, unwelcome rape, okay, a lot of those terms came up. Okay? And these are men. Believe they were all white men. It's hard to tell. So Lundergan's got a fair chance. Okay? And Republicans will say, there is no war on women. Well, really? Because it's as simple as this. And I understand you all have law degrees, or at the very least you attended college. And you have to have some grasp on the English language. I'm making a lot of assumptions right now. But rape is rape. Period. And if a woman winds up pregnant, for you to tell her what to do with her body, I gotta say, there's an awful lot of amateur gynecologists in Congress today. And it's time they get booted out. I know I'm doing all these congressional stories and, well, Congress has gone home for the month of August. Here on the fire you can't put out. I am not letting up on these guys. When House GOP leaders abruptly shelved the bill to fund standard federal transportation and housing programs last Wednesday, one of the legislation's few uncontroversial provisions was a section banning funds for the anti-poverty group ACORN. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard that correctly. ACORN, follow me, had Speaker of the House John Boehner been able to pass the bill, it would have marked the 13th time that Republicans have voted to block federal funding for ACORN since the GOP took over the lower chamber in 2011. Oddly, however, ACORN, or the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, does not exist. And it did not exist at any time when the House GOP held a vote on ACORN's access to government money. The group disbanded in the spring of 2010. 13 votes to defund a program that no longer exists. 40 votes to repeal a healthcare law that is transforming millions of lives. Legislation and directed questions to Jennifer Hing, a spokeswoman for the GOP majority House of Appropriations Committee. Hing has repeatedly told HuffPost that the defunding of ACORN is a standard provision that goes into most appropriations bills. Unlike most anti-poverty groups, ACORN was actually staffed by low-income people. The organization was never popular among conservative groups, though. There was a lot of chatter on the right after Obama won that ACORN stole the election. Not possible. But to conservatives, if a lot of minorities and a lot of poor people turn out to vote, and that's generally who ACORN targeted, because they hit the streets. They stood in front of grocery stores, in street corners, and registered people to vote in lower income neighborhoods. And based on that, more of those people turned out. That's not a stolen election. That's called democracy. But to Republicans, because ACORN was pretty pivotal in Obama's election the first time around, that's called theft. So there was a video released by James O'Keefe, a selectively edited video that appeared to show ACORN employees offering advice on tax avoidance related to prostitution and child smuggling. James O'Keefe, a couple months back, was actually sentenced for this tape because he selectively edited it. And said that ACORN was trying to, help him create child pimps and all the rest. Of course, it turned out to be a lie. But by the time the investigation about it concluded, ACORN was already gone. So, transportation and housing funding, like the Farm Bill, were once considered certain to pass in both chambers of Congress. While the political future of basic federal transportation projects remains unclear, whenever House Republicans can find something to agree on, it's a safe bet that ACORN funding ban will make the cut. Which is to say, they will continue to defund a group that no longer exists and continue to try to overturn the Obamacare, even though people at this very moment are getting wild amounts of help by Obamacare. And it's not even fully the law of the land right now. It's partially implemented. It's going to kick in on 1/1/14. The only reason they don't want it It's nothing to do with you, America. They don't care about you. Okay? Back when Social Security was being debated over, there was a lot of talk about end of America, communism, blah 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 blah. Of course, that never happened, and everyone loves Social Security now. Then Medicare, during the 60s and 70s, when that was there was a lot of talk about implementing that. Here comes the talk of communism and the end of America, blah 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 blah. Everyone loves Medicare now, and those two programs are programs that nobody wants touched. That's what's going to happen with Obamacare, and that's the real problem. They don't work for you. They don't work for me. They work for the large insurance companies, the vultures and bloodsuckers at the insurance companies. They say they're doing it for the American people. But once Obamacare is fully implemented, and it's been there for a few years, I doubt you'll find any Republican who says that they voted against it, even though they have held 40 failed votes on it. They don't want it implemented because they know once it's implemented, they'll never get rid of it. All the talk on the right, justified or unjustified, about the president and Democrats has left a lot of conservatives feeling like the world is coming to an end, right? That Obama is just this devil here to bring down America. And some people, some conservatives, stuff those feelings down inside and maybe they don't say anything about them. Some people will put a big F Obama sticker on the back of their pickup truck. Some down south, they will lynch mannequins, dark-skinned mannequins, that have the presidential logo on them or whatever. And that's hilarious to them. Whatever reason they hate the president, I don't feel like there's a lot of justice in it. As I described earlier, your problem isn't with Obama. Not a lot of what he wants is passed is getting passed. Only what the conservatives want passed generally is getting passed, with the exception of Obamacare. And of course that happened way early on, because Obama had the House and Senate for about 2 months during his first administration. Some people take that hatred, though. Well, some people take that hatred to the very edge. And sometimes they pay a heavy price for it. This week, a federal judge sentenced a Melbourne, Florida man accused of threatening to kill President Obama to 15 months in prison. Christopher Castillo, 30, made the initial threat on Facebook during the election last November. Castillo posted on Facebook, "That's the last straw. If he gets reelected, I'm going to hunt him down, kill him, and watch the life disappear from his eyes." My. Whew. When the Secret Service confronted him and asked what he would do if the president was standing in front of him, he said he would slap him and beat there's an expletive there, out of him. Castillo was hoping to not get any time behind bars. He begged the judge, saying it would be a hardship on his family and 3 children. His own attorney, you're going to love this, his own attorney called him a poor, uneducated, ignorant man, but prosecutors argued that there needs to be a message sent. It's not okay to threaten to kill the president. I'm going to pull away from the story for just a minute. This president has gotten more death threats than any president. I believe there was I didn't hear much about it with Bush, but I remember Eminem, the hip-hop vocalist, getting a visit from the Secret Service back during the first term of the Bush administration, and Obama was recording a song. It hadn't even been released yet, but in the song he said, "I don't rap for dead presidents. I'd rather see the president dead. It's never been said, but I set precedents." That line alone got him a visit from the Secret Service. And what generally happens, like with what happened with Ted Nugent last year, you get a visit. They talk to you. If they find you not a threat, they say, that, no more threatening to kill the president because it's a crime. You can't threaten to do it. It's a crime. So Obama got one of those visits, and they deemed him not a threat. Bush got a few death threats, I'm certain, but you didn't hear too much about him. But Obama's probably getting a dozen of them a day. Like, it's a lot. Like, Secret Service is working overtime right now to address all the death threats. So Castillo did not say a word outside of the federal court as he was headed to sentencing, but his father did. His father basically just screamed, "Leave me alone, leave me alone." Inside the courtroom, Castillo apologized for threatening to kill Obama. Castillo has a job selling knives. Yikes. The prosecutor said Thursday he'd been kicked out of 7th grade for carrying a knife to school, and he's the kind of person with a temper people should be concerned about. Castillo said he had anger issues, but begged the judge for leniency. His defense wanted probation, but the judge handed down the sentence. 15 months in a federal prison. Castillo was crying as U.S. Marshals walked him out of court. The judge says he has concerns about what Castillo might do to others in the community. We have free speech, but there are limits. You don't yell fire in a crowded theater, and you don't threaten to kill the president. Castillo, like his lawyer said, uneducated, ignorant, all the rest. And yeah, now he's going to pay a pretty heavy price for it. He gets to sit and think for the next 15 months about how funny it was. See, there was someone made an attempt on Ronald Reagan, on Ronald Reagan's life. You know, Ronald Reagan, of course, finished out his term, died a natural death. But think about that. Even if you kill the president, I don't think people realize how little power the president actually has. Okay? I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 more. The president doesn't pass laws. Congress does. If you kill the president, then you got the vice president. Something happens to the vice president, then whoever's the leader of the House of Representatives, that person becomes president. Okay, that's probably the other thing you should think about for killing the president. Or how about this? Don't threaten to kill the president. Castillo was dumb. While doing some research on Castillo, I found this story. Hey, at least it was a stable relationship. A man in Hidalgo County, Texas, has been arrested twice in the last 2 years for allegedly having sex with the same horse, as reported by the Houston Chronicle. Last week, 43-year-old Cirilo Castillo was saddled with charges of trespassing and cruelty to animals after police say he broke into his neighbor's corral and violated a mare named Nadia. Castillo was arrested for the exact same thing in January 2012. He was released from jail in April, which is why this time the neighbor had a security camera set up by police so he could catch the whole thing on tape. It is not going to go to America's Funniest Home Videos, that's for sure, said Sheriff Lupe Trevino. Cops noted that Castillo wouldn't be a big concern if he would just rein in the bestiality. I love how this whole story is written. The guy is practically harmless, except for the horse, Trevino added. Sheriff told KGB-TV that nonetheless Castillo would continue to do this if nobody stopped him. The people there in the neighborhood are just sick and tired of it, he said. No word on how much bail Castillo would have to pony up to get out of jail. He's not the first guy who allegedly can't quit horsing around. In 2011, South Carolina man Rodell Vereen pleaded guilty to having sex with his neighbor's horse, the same horse he also violated in 2007. That same year, a Kentucky man, Nathan Johnson, was charged with animal cruelty after a witness allegedly caught him in a compromising position with an equine. Johnson had faced the same charges in 2002, but with a different horse. I'm sorry. I usually do that at the end, like the goofy, weird stories. But the Castillo, when that came up, forgive me. I just had to throw that out there. All right, let's talk about fear. Let's talk about unnecessary fear. Okay, a lot of what is ringing right now, generally from conservative media. Now, when this show, of course, we mentioned on episode 1, we're at episode 29 now, that this show was born out of after Spokane lost its conservative or its liberal talk radio. Clear Channel, went ahead and changed the whole format of the station to a country music station because Spokane only had 5 other country music stations, so they had to. But there in Spokane, or representing Spokane County, is a man named Matt Shea. Okay? And he gave a speech this last week. And let's talk unnecessary fear from an unstable man. We've covered Matt Shea on this show before. At an Idaho State Park last weekend, Representative Matt Shea said that preparation is key to surviving what he said is an inevitable collapse that is going to happen. This comes from the Coeur d'Alene Press. Shea was one of multiple speakers to bring up preparation. Another speaker urged the creation of militias. Shea, an Army veteran, told the crowd how to prepare. He said, and I quote, "When it happens, we need to look at this as an opportunity, not a crisis," he said. "Whose job is liberty? That's our job." Shea urged the crowd to stock up on thousands of rounds of ammunition and to stay in shape, practice shooting, learn self-defense and special tactics. When he was in the military, Shea said one of his superiors told him something that he will never forget. "Be prepared at any given moment to give up your job to do what is right," he said. "You have to stand up for what is right, even if it means you have to stand up to your government." Shea's a teabagger, obviously, whipping up fear. And he is one of the Southern Poverty Law Center's most hated politicians. Shea embraced this label at the rally. The SPLC's website describes Shea's belief that President Obama is planning to take guns away from Americans and that the federal government is setting up concentration camps. Yikes. The SPLC notes that Shea once told conservative talk show host Alex Jones that the federal government was behind the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City in 1995 and that Obama is running a secret army that Shea described as very sinister. This year, Shea promoted legislation to bring more ammunition and gun parts manufacturers to Washington state to help residents who own guns. Seattle Post-Intelligencer and the Spokesman Review noted that in recent years, his ex-wife accused him during their divorce of treating her as a possession and forcing her to walk on his left-hand side since he could carry a sword in his right. In 2011, Shea was involved in an incident where he pointed a loaded gun at a driver who cut him off and then engaged the other vehicle in a high-speed chase. It doesn't surprise me that he's making these kind of statements or that he's unstable. I love the city of Spokane. I've lived there for many years. And to some degree, I will always see it as home. But due to its proximity to North Idaho, which, by the way, I believe ex-President George W. Bush still has like a 70% approval rating in that state, due to its proximity to that deeply red part of the state, a lot of that bleeds over into Spokane. And then this is what you get. So when Obamacare was being debated, and there was discussions about how to fund it, one of the things that came up was a tax on tanning beds, which, by the way, I believe is a fine idea. Follow me here. At a Saturday town hall meeting in Gainesville, Florida, Representative Ted Yoho from Florida discussed his conversation with House Speaker John Boehner about a provision in the Affordable Care Act that he considered to be racist. The plan's 10% tax on tanning beds. I had a little fun with Boehner and told him about the sun tanning tax, he said at the meeting. According to audio posted online by Right Wing Watch, Boehner says, Boehner, I didn't know it was in there. And I said, yes, it's a 10% tax. And he goes, well, that's not a big deal. Then Yoho says, it's a racist tax. In the recording, the congressman goes on to explain that when asked if he had ever visited a tanning booth, an Indian doctor in his office with very dark skin responded that he hadn't, as he had no need to do so. Yikes. So therefore, it's a racist tax, Yoho explained, and I thought I might need to go to a sun tanning booth so I can come out and say I've been disenfranchised because I got taxed because of the color of my skin. Did you follow that? Go in, get a tan, say I've been disenfranchised because I had to pay the 10% tax. As crazy as it sounds, that's what the left does to the right. By God, if it works for them, it'll work for us, he says. The tax in question was initially proposed to deter Americans from frequenting tanning beds, which one study found causes roughly 170,000 cases of skin cancer each year. Representative Alan West has also denounced the tax as racist. In 2010, conservative radio host Doc Thompson voiced a similar complaint while standing in for Glenn Beck on his Fox News radio show. Earlier this year, the FDA proposed a warning label requirement for all materials promoting tanning beds and completely barring bed use by customers under 18, according to the Skin Cancer Foundation. Skin cancer is the most common form of cancer found in the U.S. There were quite a few rumblings about this during the Obamacare debates. And it's been said more than once and in more than one place that this was Obama's sly little way of getting back at Weiner, because anyone who's seen a picture of him, he's bright orange. Okay? He's just so heavily tan. Bright orange, cries all the time. We here on the Fire You Can't Put Out, we call him the Weeping Cheeto. Ted Yoho. Yeah, you're my DM. All right, let's move away from Congress for a little bit, and let's get into this story, which just broke in this past week. Poverty, overwhelming poverty, which seems to be growing year after year. It's been said there are two Americas, and there certainly are, and the yawning chasm between those is becoming deeper and wider all the time. After the collapse of 2008, it became pretty apparent that the wealthy were not going to suffer. The economy has been set up so that if things go well, the rich get rich. If things go bad, the rich get rich. It's a game. It's a rigged system. Okay? It's set up the same for them no matter what. After the 2008 collapse, did you get rich? No, neither did I. Most of us felt hardship, quite a bit of it. And we saw the pain in the faces of our friends and neighbors. Poverty's a tough thing. I grew up in absolute poverty without a lot of things. Without good clothing, without good shoes, without housing sometimes, went hungry quite a bit. And it's not fun. I've worked pretty hard as I became an adult to see that it doesn't happen again. But I know what it's like to be there. And I understand the desperation for love, food, a warm place to sleep. And so when I found this story, my mind instantly went back to so many of those days I spent as that underprivileged youth. In raids across the country, 105 youngsters were rescued from prostitution by officers who also arrested 150 alleged pimps, the FBI announced Monday. Mostly all girls, the minors ranged in age from 13 to 17, and one girl told authorities she had started turning tricks at age 11. Underage prostitutes often work venues such as the Super Bowl, NCAA playoffs, and tourist hotspots such as New Jersey's Atlantic City. Many times the children that are taken in these types of criminal activities are children that are disaffected. They are from broken homes. They may be on the streets themselves. They're really looking for a meal. They're looking for shelter. They're looking for someone to take care of them. And that's really the first approach that's made, said Assistant Director Kevin Perkins at a news conference in Washington, D.C. Many of the pimped out youths are runaways from foster care who never get reported as missing. Others are troubled teens recruited by exploiters who promise a glamorous escape from being homeless. A lot of these kids feel like they're in love, and therefore many of them will go back. So it's not only important that they get help, but they need a specialized kind of help, said Ernie Allen, president of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The arrests occurred in cities including Atlantic City, New Jersey, New Haven, Connecticut, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Miami, San Francisco, and Detroit. The FBI also released raw video showing unidentified adults being handcuffed and taken into custody, as well as surveillance footage from hidden cameras in motel rooms showing underage girls and their clients shortly before authorities swooped in. The sweeps are part of the FBI's Innocence Lost National Initiative, which was started in 2003. More than 2,200 children have been freed from forced prostitution, the agency says, and 1,000 adults have been convicted of endangering and exploiting children. This is one of the things that we don't talk about when we talk about poverty. There's an awful lot of demonization that goes on the right. Recently, Republicans were talking about cutting $60 billion from food stamps, okay? Saying that they don't need it. It makes people dependent on government. And then they proceeded to spend $60 million on defunding Obamacare. When they try to take away welfare benefits, look, nobody likes the idea that most of us work and some of us don't. Yet we all eat. Some people hate that idea. I don't mind. I will pay a little extra in taxes so that my countrymen don't go hungry. So that children, such as myself, the younger me, don't have to go hungry and don't have to go without housing. Okay? Yeah, it bothers you that you work and you pay taxes, and some of those taxes go to take care of your fellow men and women who aren't as fortunate to have a job. But it doesn't bother me. And I think stories like this really should be on the front page. Because this is one of the things people don't think about. They go, oh, well, whatever. They don't have a place to live. They don't have anything to eat. Fine. Well, these children became prostitutes. Forced into it. They're not born as a child playing with toys, hanging out with friends, and going, God, I can't wait to turn 11 so I can start turning tricks. You're still a child at that point. So, all of the things that come along with absolutely debilitating poverty, it isn't just hunger and it isn't just homelessness. There's actually something worse than death. And it's the fact that this is happening to our children. And Congress and right-wing pundits are endlessly vilifying the poor. Nobody likes to be poor. I'm sure there's a very small section of America that honestly doesn't want to work. They've been given opportunities and they honestly don't want to work. But I'm sure that number is incredibly small. I believe most people want to earn their keep. And when you vilify poor people and you work incredibly hard to defund social programs that help them while simultaneously working incredibly hard for more tax cuts for the wealthy, you, Mitch McConnell, you, John Boehner, you guys, this crime is on your hands. Only in America, switching gears here, only in America is there still a debate about global warming. And that, by and large, is because more and more of the people that benefit from poisoning the air, more and more of those people are buying up more and more media outlets. Australian Rupert Murdoch owns a lot of them. The Koch brothers own a lot of them. And the Koch brothers, the Koch brothers, look them up, K-O-C-H, they are looking to buy even more media so they can stem the global warming debate. But no matter how well they are at stemming the debate, it's not going to change things like this. It's a myth that there are no winners from climate change. Global warming is doubling bark beetle mating, boosting tree attacks up to 60-fold, The decline in creatures with shells could trigger an explosion in jellyfish populations. The acidic water also is making animals that do have shells, is making their shells softer. Climate change helps spread dengue fever in 28 states. Excuse me, I might be saying that wrong. And of course, climate change will make invasive plants even more dominant in the landscape. And let's not forget rat snakes. God, that just sounds bad. Another apparent winner is Naegleria fowleri, aka N. fowleri. The bad news, it's a fatal infection without an effective treatment, and one that strikes in a decidedly gruesome manner. An amoebic organism lurking in water is inadvertently inhaled during a swim on a hot summer's day. From there, it travels through the nasal passage and into the brain, where it multiplies, devours one's cerebral fluid and gray matter, and almost invariably causes death. The good news is that it is, or has been, an exceedingly rare disease. Between 2002 and 2011, there were only 32 infections in the U.S., but as far back as 2007, Michael Beach at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, expert in recreational waterborne illnesses, has warned that this, the brain-eating one, this is a heat-loving amoeba. As water temperatures go up, it does better. In future decades, as temperatures rise, we'd expect to see more cases. The CDC notes that this thermophilic amoeba is able to grow and survive at higher temperatures, such as those found in hot springs and in the human body, and even under fever temperatures. That's right. When you get a fever, of course, that's your body heating up to get rid of something. This thing grows the warmer you get. The point isn't that N. fowleri is the most destructive of all the animals, insects, and organisms that benefit from climate change. The voracious bark beetle probably wins in that category so far. The point is that invasive species, almost by definition, want to see climate change. So the next time someone says that there will be winners and losers from global warming, remember that many of those winners will help make Homo sapiens one of the biggest losers. So they call this an invasive species, and it is. I would say the Koch brothers are much the same. They're an invasive species who also benefits from global warming. There's a girl right now who's in the hospital fighting for her life, and she has this brain disease, this amoeba that's eating her cerebral fluid and gray matter. She's 12. It's not looking good, and it's hard to say if she would have gotten it anyway. But what is clear is fowleri. So for those of you that want to deny global warming, I would say you folks are not using your brains. And that's probably going to work out well for you. Because when fowleri attacks, it'll just eat that brain for you. And then you will die. It's a serious thing. Global warming's real. The debate is over. Warmer water, warmer oceans and lakes, it doesn't do anything for us. It's hot. It's summer right now, right? Everyone's out doing their thing in the water. Well, more and more people are going to be inhaling these things. This is not to freak out and everybody stop breathing and going into the water. It's still rare enough, but not as rare as it once was. Thanks to global warming, it's exploding. It's real, folks. And it's time we start doing something about global warming. Our carbon output, our carbon concentration in the environment is hit 400 parts per million earlier this year. 350 is the point at which things begin to die. And we're at 400 and climbing. We got to do something, and do something soon. Denial's not working. All right, that was mean of me saying that your brains that you aren't using are going to get eaten by the fowleri. My apologies. But honestly, we do need to think about it. So, what happened this week in Anthony Weiner? Who cares? He's probably going to be out of the race soon. So let's talk about Anthony Weiner of Boston. Whoa. Another Anthony Weiner. Yeah, oh yeah. In a sexting scandal. Oh yeah. Follow me. A suburban Boston man with the same name as the pervy New York politician was caught in his own sexting scandal and landed in jail for putting the wood to a man caught wooing his wife with text messages, authorities have said. This Anthony Weiner, 25, of Revere, Massachusetts, used his wife's phone to send a text to the 21-year-old Winthrop man to meet him at another house in Revere. Once there, the guest was greeted with a bat to the head. Prosecutor said Weiner tied the man to a chair, threatened him with a power tool and a BB gun, and only released him when the terrified victim began vomiting. The Boston Weiner paid the battered man an unspecified amount of hush money before putting him into a cab. The victim wound up at Israeli Deaconess Medical Center in Boston with a head injury. Weiner, whose next court appearance is set for Monday, is charged with assault with intent to murder, assault and battery with a dangerous weapons, and kidnapping. Whew. After his arrest, this Weiner, unlike the cyber-cheating ex-congressman, immediately fessed up. But he did claim that he acted in self-defense. The incident was hardly the first hint of marital discord for the Massachusetts man. His April 2012 wedding reception ended after his mother, Darlene Deloreal, began brawling with her son's new mother-in-law. Yikes. According to the news reports, Weiner bolted from the Davenport Yacht Club before the cops could arrest him for punching his new bride's mother. Holy hell. Forgive my language. Yeah, so now we've done two Wieners. Yeah, I know. And as far as the other, and please, he'll be out of that New York race soon. No one's paying attention to that guy. All right, so a couple fun things, and then I'm going to do my final thought. The test tube burger was tested this week, grown in vitro from cattle stem cells with a cost of $332,000 or 250,000 euros. The burger was cooked and eaten in front of television cameras to gain the greatest media coverage for the culmination of a 5-year science experiment. Resembling a standard circular-shaped red meat patty, it was created by knitting together 20,000 strands of laboratory-grown protein, combined with other ingredients normally used in burgers such as salt, breadcrumbs, and egg powder. Red beet juice and saffron were added to give it color. The two food tasters were reserved in their judgment. Pretty much everyone was to taste of this thing. Perhaps keen not to offend their host at the London event, noting instead that the burger had an absence of fat. The Dutch scientist's aim, the guy who created it, was to show the world that the future of meat will not necessarily have to come from the environmentally and economically costly rearing and slaughtering of animals. Current meat production is at its maximum, he said. We need to come up with an alternative. That's interesting to me. I just became a vegetarian, and I feel like more and more people are becoming vegetarians. They're saying that our meat production is at a maximum. That sounds weird to me. The World Health Organization, who says meat production is projected to rise to 376 million tons by 2030 from 218 million tons annually in 1997 and 1999, and demand from a growing world population is expected to rise beyond that. The meat industry contributes about 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions, a proportion expected to grow as consumers in fast-developing countries such as China and India eat more meat. Post said he was confident his concept could be scaled up to offer a viable alternative to animal meat production, but said that it may be another 20 years before lab-grown meat appears on supermarket shelves. He also conceded that the flavor of his meat must be improved if it is to become a popular choice. That's interesting to me. So, if you want to try the burger, it's $250,000. So you're not going to have it now. But in 20 years, hey, could be on your shelves in your local grocery store. And it's not meat. It's grown from meat DNA. Or God, it's so weird to me. The test tube burger. All right. Fun story. Final thought. Let's go. Tupac Shakur ended up as a joint. That came out of nowhere, right? Tupac's last wish is hardly common. Still, it isn't as unusual as one may think. The number of people choosing an alternative to the peaceful coffin or urn of ashes is increasing every year. Nature lovers can work around this problem elegantly by asking that their ashes be turned into fertilizer for a newly planted young tree. As the tree grows, it absorbs into the ground cover in its roots. Its branches and foliage soon flourish into a natural grave. I think that's kind of a sweet idea. The pan-European company Algordanza converts the ashes of dead ones into faux diamonds. The process from order to delivery usually takes 2 to 4 months, and the price depends on the carat and weight of the gemstone, between 4,800 and 10,000 Swiss francs, or 5,300 to 11,085 American. Actor James Doohan, Scotty in the TV series Star Trek, and LSD guru Timothy Leary had particularly cool send-offs. They both had their ashes attached to a rocket and sent into space. Price tag on that? Around 10 grand. Another original but far more sustainable offer comes from the British company and Vinyl, who rewrote the well-known RIP, rest in peace, to RIV, rest in vinyl. This is cool. Specifically, the ashes of the deceased are processed into a working vinyl record. The simplest version costs $3,100, but that will get you 30 vinyl copies, enough for friends and relatives, onto which music or recorded message can be pressed. One particularly spooky option: opt against a song or message and leave only the eerie crackling of ash to be heard on the disc. Ooh. Or choose the ultimate option, which will run you $5,500. James Haig, a painter at the National Portrait Gallery, will use residual ashes and acrylics to paint your face into a gorgeous pastel colors onto the album covers. Unlike Al Gardanza, whose diamond offer is strictly limited to human ashes, Vinylly, excuse me, I'm having trouble saying that, will also process your pet's ashes onto a record. In Thailand, there's a new drug concoction called Tai Hong, in which cooked leaves from the kratom tree are mixed with freshly cremated ashes, and it's quickly gaining popularity. Supposedly, not only does the drink have an exquisite flavor, but it also elicits a heightened state of consciousness, usually not for too long, but just enough time to share an unforgettable farewell. I always love to throw in a fun story at the end. So, my final thought this week, sticking with how the show started tonight, this week my final thought is when they say government. Often it's said, shrink government, or get rid of government altogether, and everything will be better. Shrink government, shrink government. Quit spending money, blah, 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 blah. We're running a surplus right now, okay? Money's not being spent like crazy, and even if it was, the House, run by Republicans, they hold the purse strings. They can stop spending money, but they're not. They're spending money and screaming at Obama for it. We must shrink government. We must shrink government. Here, let me help you guys with your messaging a little bit. And let me help you, the listener, understand what they mean when they say government. And you'll understand why they use the word government instead of these words. Police, teachers, federal food inspectors, highway workers, roads, bridges, high-speed rail, affordable health care, direct democracy, park rangers, union families, and you. When they say shrink government, this is what they're talking about. Police, teachers, firefighters, you. They want you out of the process. They want you to have less teachers, less police, less food inspectors. They don't want innovation. They don't want high-speed rail. But they can't say that. Imagine if they came out and they said, we want there to be less cops in the streets. People would freak. What if they said, we want less federal food inspectors? How safe would you feel the next time you went to the grocery store? But they can't say that. So they try this focus group tested government. And it works because the word government has been demonized, such to the point that nobody remembers, if there is any institutional memory at all, about learning what the word government means. I don't think a lot of us do know what it means. I think a lot of us just heard it and go, oh, those are the people in the State House or up on Capitol Hill. Ladies and gentlemen, if your government does not work for you, you can thank you. Because you put those people up there. And a lot of you put those people up there when, as they were running for House, Senate, Congress, governor, whatever, they were screaming. Those people, those elected politicians were screaming about how much they hated government. So you sent them to work for the government. And then they didn't do a good job. And you get to go, see, government just can't do anything right. No. It's not true. If they're screaming about how much they hate government, then they get there and they do a bad job, that's on you. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with government. Okay? It makes sense to have our collective efforts concentrated through direct democracy into something that works for us. But when we argue and we say we need less government, what you're saying is you're saying, take me, you, my friends and neighbors and fellow countrymen out of the democratic process and only let the wealthy do whatever they want to do. We wind up broke, poor, jobless, fine. Anything that's not government. Ladies and gentlemen, when you say get rid of government, you're saying you want to be out of the process. You no longer want your opinion considered. You're sick of democracy. Well, you just might get your wish. And you need to be careful what you wish for. Because you are, realize it or not, you are the government. That's my word for this week. I want to thank you, everybody, for tuning into The Fire You Can't Put Out. I am Melvin. And this was show number 29. I want to thank our good friends over at Open Sky Radio for all of their help. You can find us on Facebook. Just go to Facebook, punch in The Fire You Can't Put Out. We are the only ones on there. And I want to thank you, the listener out there, for hanging with me. I want to wish good luck to my co-hosts Kevin and Angela. I know you guys are doing your thing out there, and I hope to hear back from you soon. Good day, everybody, and goodbye.